All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminist revenge fantasy. Hating dads, hurting kids. Written by Sophie Marie Eve Riker. Available now. Links in description. The syllogism of the spine. Why your fake laugh is treason. Weaponizing guerrilla posture and stoic silence to crush the Marxist superstructure, I have watched the vanguard of cultural Marxism invert the very reality we inhabit, replacing the biological base of evolution and hierarchy with a delusional superstructure built on guilt and grievance. This is not an accident. It is a calculated strategy to dismantle the living spirit of Western civilization by severing man from his nature. They use the Frankfurt School's pathology to turn the family courts into wealth transfer mechanisms that punish the productive male and hurt kids by destroying the father. All while screaming about a non-existent patriarchy that serves only as a boogeyman to justify their gynocentric tyranny. The logic here is irrefutable. If the foundation of society is a lie, every institution built upon it becomes a weapon against you. You see the evidence of this psychological warfare in the physical realm every single day. I look at modern men and I see the beta slump, a posture of submission that signals to the world that you have been conquered. The leftists encourage you to shrink, to cross your legs, and apologize for your existence because they know that a man with an open, expansive posture, the guerrilla walk of high testosterone and dominance, is a biological threat to their fragile, emotion-based order. Reclaiming your physical space is not merely an aesthetic choice. It is a direct, aggressive refutation of the lie that your masculinity is toxic. When you occupy space with confidence, you are embodying the transcendental property of the beautiful, a truth that the ugliness of the woke mob seeks desperately to erase. They test your compliance in the most insidious ways, often by simply telling a bad joke on purpose to see if you will bend the knee. I implore you to observe the reaction of the men around you. The ones who fake laugh at the absurdity of identity politics are surrendering their reason to the collective, trading their souls for safety in the corporate HR meeting. That fake laugh is the death of the West. Your isolation, that crushing male loneliness epidemic they ignore, is their endgame. They need you atomized and alone because they know that a solitary man is a casualty, but a brotherhood of rational. Dangerous men is a revolution. It is time to stop laughing at the bad jokes, to straighten your spine, and to realize that your solitude is the fortress where you will sharpen the mind to strike back. The base of lies, the Marxist inversion of reality, the fundamental error of the modern age, the great lie upon which the entire cathedral of feminist woe is built, is the Marxist inversion of reality itself. Karl Marx, a man whose intellect was eclipsed only by his resentment, proposed that the economic base of society, the production of goods, creates the cultural superstructure, our laws, religion, and families. This is the materialist dialectic, and it is as false as a politician's promise. I present to you the irrefutable syllogism of biological reality. Major premise: All human social structures are evolutionary adaptations designed for the survival and propagation of the genes. Minor premise: biology is immutable and precedes economics, as one must eat and procreate before they can trade. Conclusion, therefore, culture is not a product of economics, but of biological imperative. By ignoring the biological-based testosterone, estrogen, parental investment, and mating strategies, Marxism builds its superstructure on a void. Feminism, being the derivative of this era, is merely a ghost story told to scare men into giving up their authority. It is a detached, delusional floating castle with no foundation in the soil of truth. If the economic base is false, then the patriarchy, the central demon of the feminist cosmology, is exposed not as a historical fact, but as a metaphysical boogeyman. In the realm of grammar, we must define patriarchy not as a conspiracy of men against women, but as the historical necessity of male stewardship where the burdens of civilization, defense, infrastructure, and governance fell upon those with the physical capacity to shoulder them. To reframe this sacrifice as an oppressive power grab is a linguistic trick, a theft of virtue. When you apply logic to the feminist claim, the argument collapses. If the patriarchy was designed to privilege men, why are men the overwhelming victims of workplace fatalities, suicide, and homelessness? The patriarchy is nothing more than a rhetorical weapon used to induce guilt in the masculine psyche, convincing you that your natural strength is a sin rather than the very shield that protects the fragile from the harshness of reality. This abstract lie concretizes into the nightmare of the divorce court industrial complex, which functions as the ultimate realization of the Marxist superstructure. Here we see the false theory in practice. The family unit is treated not as a biological bond, but as an economic entity to be liquidated. The courts, predicated on the false Marxist assumption of a class struggle between the sexes, operate as a wealth transfer mechanism that punishes the male productive class. Consider the statistics, stark and undeniable. Approximately 70 to 80% of divorces are initiated by women, yet the legal machinery almost universally awards them custody of children and assets stripped from the father. This is not justice. It is the extraction of resources from the productive male, the capitalist, to subsidize the lifestyle of the proletariat ex-wife, enforced by a state that has replaced the father figure. The male is reduced to a tax donkey, his biological imperative to protect his children neutered by a gavel-gaveling down the lies of equity. This leads us to the grotesque evolutionary parody of the welfare state, a system that weaponizes resources to undermine the male role and turn men into disposable utilities. In the natural order, the alpha secures resources to attract a mate and raise offspring, incentivizing competence and provision. The modern state, however, mimics this provisioning strategy without demanding competence, virtue, or loyalty from the recipient. By becoming the ultimate provider, Uncle Sam as the baby daddy, the state allows women to select for the most exciting volatile mates, the cads, while the stable, productive men, the dads, are taxed to support the offspring that aren't even theirs. This is a cuckoldry scheme on a civilizational scale, a biological hack that tricks the evolutionary mechanism of pair bonding by replacing the protector with a bureaucrat, leaving men emasculated and resentful in a land of plenty where they own nothing. We must trace the origins of this pathology to the Frankfurt School, a cabal of academics who realized that their Marxist economic theories were failing the West and decided to infect our culture instead. They migrated the battlefield from the factory to the bedroom, understanding that to control a man, you must break his spirit before you take his wallet. Critical theory is not a search for truth. It is a rhetorical weapon designed solely to criticize and dismantle Western norms, utilizing a perpetual critique to induce submission. They taught us that our traditions are oppressive and our instincts are toxic, aiming to make the Western male apologize for his existence. This is the psychological equivalent of cutting a man's Achilles tendon, so he cannot run from the beast coming to devour him. It is a pathology of self-hatred injected into the curriculum of the universities. This brings us to the implementation of vanguard party theory as the template for our current gynocentric tyranny. Lenin argued that a conscious minority of professional revolutionaries must lead the unconscious masses toward the revolution. Today, that conscious minority is the radical feminist and cultural Marxist occupying the HR department, the judiciary, and the media. They are a tiny conspiratorial cabal dictating the false reality to the unconscious majority of men who just want to work and provide. They act as the vanguard, enforcing a reality where the feelings of a few outweigh the facts of the many, using the institutional power they hijacked to police language and thought. This is why you feel the suffocating weight of political correctness. It is the vanguard tightening the screws to ensure the unconscious majority never wakes up to the theft of their culture. To shatter this spell and reclaim the living spirit of Western civilization, you must weaponize the trivium, using the medieval tools of learning to dismantle the modern cathedral of lies. First, employ grammar to define terms rigorously. Refuse to let them redefine woman, violence, or hate to suit their totalitarian whims. Second, use logic to spot the non sequiturs in their arguments. When they claim the wage gap is due to sexism, use the syllogism to show it is a result of different choices in hours worked and career paths. Finally, wield rhetoric to destroy the narrative in the public square. Do not debate politely, but rather mock the absurdity of their claims with humor and biting wit, stripping them of their moral authority. By mastering these tools, you reclaim your mind, becoming the rational man who can see the matrix for what it is. A cage built of guilt, forged by lies, and maintained by the surrender of your own masculine sovereignty. I see clearly that the cultural Marxist assault does not stop at the abstract idea of masculinity, but ruthlessly attacks the biological reality of the male body. They understand, with the predatory instinct of a jealous rival, that a man who occupies space cannot be enslaved, and so they have engineered a narrative to demonize the very posture that signals life and vitality. We must shatter this psychological cage by examining the evolutionary mechanics of dominance, exposing their lies for the biological ignorance they are. The stature of truth, reclaiming the masculine form. The ancient statues of Greece and Rome did not stand with their knees locked together and their eyes cast downward in some groveling plea for forgiveness. They stood with chests broad, shoulders back, and a gaze that pierced the horizon because they understood that the masculine form is a vessel of the sublime, a biological cathedral carved by millennia of survival and conquest. The modern lie of toxic masculinity is not merely a linguistic error or a sociological theory. It is a logical fallacy of the highest order, a direct contradiction to the reality of nature itself. To assert that the drive to dominate, to build, and to impose order upon chaos is a pathology is to accuse the very foundation of civilization of being a mistake. If you look to the animal kingdom or simply open your eyes to the history of the West, you see that aggression and stature are not optional accessories, but the necessary engines of survival. When the screeching voices of the cultural Marxists demand that you shrink, they are demanding that you commit suicide, because in the brutal calculus of biology, he who refuses to take up space is immediately marked as prey. The logical syllogism is irrefutable. Civilization requires protection. Protection requires strength. Strength requires a rejection of the effeminate call to be small and apologetic. This biological imperative is written in our very flesh, specifically in the open, expansive posture that high-status men have naturally adopted for eons. Research into evolutionary biology confirms what our instincts already scream at us. Expanding one's physical presence signals high testosterone and reproductive viability. It is a broadcast to the world that you are a man capable of asserting your will. Conversely, the feminist agenda, which is really just a mask for a death cult, encourages men to adopt a closed, contracted posture, crossing their legs and hunching their shoulders. This is not merely a suggestion to be polite. It is a coordinated attempt to chemically and socially castrate the male. By physically shrinking, you lower your testosterone, you signal submission to the herd, and you accept the status of a drone in the hive mind of the gynocentric order. They want you to physically manifest your own oppression, to turn your body into a cage of apology, trapping the spirit of the warrior within a prison of subservience. Walk through any modern city and observe the men around you, specifically watching how they carry themselves across the pavement. You will see the beta slump everywhere, heads buried in smartphones, spines curled like question marks of shame, walking with a shuffle that begs for a kick rather than commanding respect. This is a physical manifestation of the internalized oppression, a somatic submission to the lie that men are inherently dangerous beasts that must be tamed. Contrast this with the gorilla walk, that rolling, confident gait of a man who knows his worth and claims his territory. The collapse of male posture is not a fashion trend, it is the visible surrender of the West. When a man walks with presence, he is not merely occupying space, he is asserting his right to exist, to speak and to lead. The collapse of the spine is the collapse of the empire, for a nation of slouching men is a nation already conquered. Therefore, the act of correcting your posture is not a matter of physical therapy, it is a radical political act, a middle finger thrust in the face of the establishment. Walking down the street with your head high and your shoulders back is a direct, aggressive refutation of the leftist demand that you apologize for your existence. You must weaponize your physicality. When you enter a room and refuse to shrink, when you stand with your feet apart and your hands visible, you are engaging in a silent warfare against the ideology of decay. They fear your confidence because they cannot control it. They cannot debate a man who occupies his space with the unshakable certainty of his own virtue. To stand tall is to reclaim the masculine form as an instrument of truth, shattering the fragile ego of the collective. The evidence of this spiritual rot is most visible in the soy boy phenomenon, a caricature of manhood that has become a grim reality on university campuses and in corporate HR meetings. I have seen it with my own eyes, the crossed legs, the high-pitched vocal fry, the wide, fearful eyes darting around the room seeking permission to speak. This posture of submission is not learned, it is enforced by a system that trades safety for the spine. These men have traded their birthright of dominance for a mess of pottage, becoming evolutionary dead ends who confuse compliance with virtue. They are the ultimate products of a system that hates the male, a biological joke played by nature on those who refuse to participate in the struggle for existence. They are not harmless, they are the enforcers of the lie, the walking advertisements for the emasculation of the West. We must return to the concept of the beautiful as a transcendental property of the masculine form. A man who occupies space with confidence is not arrogant, a label hurled by the envious to drag the strong down to the level of the weak. He is embodying a divine order of hierarchy. The beauty of the masculine form, broad shoulders, square jaw, upright stance, is a reflection of the objective moral order, a physical manifestation of the good and the true. The leftist ideology seeks to erase this beauty because beauty requires standards, and standards exclude the mediocre. By celebrating the ugly, the weak, and the androgynous, they are not just changing aesthetics, they are waging war against the structure of reality itself. To embrace the masculine aesthetic is to embrace the transcendental, to become a living monument to the order of the cosmos. History screams this truth, yet we refuse to listen. Look at the late Roman Empire, where men became soft, obsessed with comfort and entertainment, abandoning the discipline of the Republic for the pleasures of the bathhouse. The physical softening of the Roman male preceded the fall, just as it is preceding our fall. When a civilization ceases to respect the physical authority of its men, it creates a vacuum that will be filled by those who do, the barbarians at the gate, the cultures that have not been infected by the virus of feminism. We are living through the effeminization of the West, a deliberate culling of the masculine spirit. If we do not reclaim our stature, if we do not stand up and physically reject the lies of the matriarchy, we are doomed to be erased by the cold, hard judgment of history. The statue of truth must be raised from the rubble of modern lies, stone by stone, sinew by sinew. I sat there witnessing the systematic gelding of the West, realizing that this theater of compliance relies entirely on the cowardice of men to call out a lie when they see it. That nervous laughter was the death rattle of their integrity. the sound of reason voluntarily surrendering to the emotional whims of the collective. Make no mistake, the absurdity was the point. Telling a joke that is deliberately unfunny is the ultimate compliance test, a trap designed to flush out the dangerous freethinkers from the obedient simps. To survive this modern Babylon, we must weaponize the truth and understand that the only thing these revolutionaries fear is the sound of a man refusing to laugh. The theater of compliance, when the joke is on you. I sat in a windowless conference room, smelling of stale coffee and submission, watching a middle-aged manager with dead eyes and a mortgage he couldn't afford nodding enthusiastically as a diversity consultant explained that mathematics is a construct of white supremacy. This was the theater of compliance, a live stage play where the crowd of men, terrified of losing their livelihoods, agreed to the insanity that 2 + 2 = 5 if the person saying it had the right political victimhood status. The consultant, a woman with a jawline sharper than her logic, told a joke that had no punchline, only a political premise, and the room erupted in nervous, synchronized laughter. It was a cringe-inducing display of mass hysteria, a ritual of submission where the absurdity of the statement was the point, the more ludicrous the lie. The more fervent the agreement had to be to prove your loyalty to the collective. This is the reality of the modern corporate prison, a gulag of the mind where men are stripped of their reason and forced to applaud their own castration. The leftist establishment has constructed a fragile house of cards built on the subjective feelings of the neurotic, and they know it. They fear nothing more than the sound of men laughing at them. Humor is the weapon of the revolution because it pierces the veil of their self-importance and exposes the clownish nature of their dogma. When you laugh at a feminist's assertion that the pay gap is a result of discrimination rather than choices in hours worked and career paths, you are not just being rude, you are dropping a truth bomb that shatters their ego. They have no defense against ridicule because their entire ideology is a joke taken seriously. The vanguard of cultural Marxism relies on you treating their delusions with reverence. So you must treat them with the mockery they deserve. Laugh loudly and openly when they say my truth, for the sound of your laughter is the bell tolling for the end of their rule over your mind. You have surely experienced the slimy feeling of being manipulated, where truth is inverted to serve the oppressor's narrative. This is the crazy frame, a rhetorical trap designed to make you question your sanity when you point out that the emperor has no clothes. They label you as fragile or reactive for objecting to being demonized by your gender. The remedy is to recognize the frame and flip the script with the precision of a master logician. When accused of hatred for stating biological facts, you must mock the absurdity of the accuser with such ferocity that observers realize the accuser is the true lunatic. Do not defend yourself against the accusation. Attack the premise of the questioner. If a woman claims oppression by patriarchy while earning more than you in a comfortable office, laugh in her face and expose the con. We must employ the iron logic of the trivium to dismantle the notion of subjective truth. The law of non-contradiction dictates that it cannot be both A and not A simultaneously. Yet, the leftist ideology demands you accept that a man can be a woman, that weakness is strength, and that their feelings supersede biological reality. Accepting a bad joke as funny simply because it is politically correct is the intellectual equivalent of accepting that 2 + 2 = 5. This is the gateway to totalitarianism, the surrender of the mind to the whims of the collective. If you concede that my truth is valid despite contradicting objective reality, you have abandoned the very faculty that makes you human. You must draw the line in the sand and refuse to accept the premise, for logic is the fortress of the West and the only weapon that can slay the dragon of relativism. This brings us to the most insidious aspect of female social strategy, a behavior rooted in evolutionary biology that plays out in boardrooms and bedrooms alike. The telling of a bad joke on purpose as the ultimate compliance test. When a woman states an absurdity, a contradiction, a lie, a vitriolic condemnation of men, she is gauging your reaction. If you laugh, you signal that you are a liar and a simp, a beta male willing to abandon reality for the chance of sexual or social access. You are telling her that your integrity is for sale. If you stay silent, or worse, if you challenge her, you are identified as dangerous and free. This is the same mechanism used by totalitarian regimes to root out dissidents. They push a lie and see who swallows it. Do not be the fool who laughs at the lie. Be the man who stares back in stony, judgmental silence. That fake chuckling nod you give in the break room, that is the sound of your soul dying. It is the death rattle of the masculine spirit, the audible proof that you have surrendered your reason to the emotional whims of the collective. We must view the performative emasculation of men in the workplace and relationships for what it is, a tragedy of epic proportions. Men are killing themselves in record numbers, driven to despair by the constant demand to apologize for their existence. The fake laugh is the surrender flag, waved by men who have forgotten that they are the bearers of civilization's torch. You cannot fake your way through the decline of the West. You must stand, rooted in virtue, and refuse to participate in the degradation of your own sex. There is a profound power in the silence of the Stoic, a sharp contrast to the neurotic chatter of the fool who seeks validation. The modern male is conditioned to fill the void with noise, to apologize, to explain, to qualify his statements with "just my opinion" to appease the shrieking harpies of political correctness. Stop talking, stop explaining. When faced with the absurdity of the woke mob, your silence is a wall they cannot breach. It screams that you are not buying what they are selling. In the face of the bad joke, the silence of a confident man is louder than a riot. It is the silence of the West before it wakes up to reclaim its heritage. Do not laugh at the joke. Do not apologize for not laughing. Just sit there, immovable as a mountain, and let the truth of your existence speak for itself. When you master this silence, you cease to be a cog in their machine and begin to resemble the great figures of our past who built civilization not in the clamor of the marketplace, but in the terrifying quiet of their own minds. They call this isolation a disease to be cured by the state, but that is a lie designed to keep you from the truth. True power is forged in the solitude they fear you will discover. The solitude of the Stoic, weaponizing isolation. Nietzsche once declared that the spirit of gravity weighs upon the thinker who seeks solitude. But I tell you, the gravity of the herd is the burden that crushes the soul of the modern man. Look back through the canon of Western civilization and tell me where the fire was brightest. It was in the isolation of the cell, the study, or the mountain peak. The great minds who forged the intellectual foundations of our reality did so not in the clamor of the marketplace, but in the terrifying, liberating silence of their own company. When you strip away the noise of the crowd, you find the raw material of truth. This isolation is not a defect. It is the incubator for the rational mind, the forge where the steel of masculinity is tempered away from the corrosive rust of feminine sentimentality. The modern world tells you that being alone is a failure, but history screams that it is the prerequisite for the kind of breakthrough thinking that pulls civilization out of the dark. They tell you the male loneliness epidemic is a crisis of mental health, a failure of capitalism, or a lack of community resources. But I am here to tell you this is a strategic feature of the gynocentric machine, not a bug. The state and its feminist handlers fear nothing more than a band of brothers united by a common cause and a shared grip on reality. Bros before Hos is not just a mantra for the fraternity, it is a political threat to an establishment that relies on the atomization of men to maintain control. If men bond, they share notes, they compare experiences, and they quickly realize the divorce courts are rigged, the family laws are exploitative, and the cultural narrative is a lie. By demonizing male spaces and pathologizing the desire for male-only association, they have successfully quarantined us, ensuring we remain isolated worker units rather than a cohesive force capable of challenging the matriarchy. You see the constant leftist bleating for men to open up, to be vulnerable, and to process emotions for what it is. A trap designed to strip you of your defenses. They want you to lower your shield so they can drive the spear home. The call to man up has been twisted from a demand for stoic resilience into a demand for emotional submission. Do not fall for it. A man who reveals his wounds to a shark is asking to be eaten. Instead, we channel that isolation into the Stoic tradition of the West, converting the raw pain of betrayal into a cold, hard rage that fuels action. We do not weep in circles. We lift iron, we build fortunes, and we master the trivium. We take the energy of our solitude and weaponize it. The archetype of the lone wolf has been dragged through the mud by the cultural Marxists, smeared with the label of involuntary celibate to make you fear your own independence. They paint the solitary man as a dangerous deviant, because a man who is alone with his thoughts is immune to the hive mind contagion of feminism. When you cut the cord to the matrix of public opinion, you become the ultimate avatar of Western civilization, a sovereign individual who answers only to logic and God. The solitary man is not a failed participant in the system. He is the only one who has escaped it. He is the observer who sees the strings on the puppets while the crowd applauds the show. Consider the statistics of silence, the cold, hard data that the mainstream media loves to gloss over with tears and pity. We are told that men are dying of loneliness, but let us look at the scoreboard with eyes unclouded by sentimentality. Men account for nearly 70% of suicides in the West, a number that spikes dramatically after divorce or custody hearings. These are not just tragic accidents. These are casualties of the war on masculinity. The system extracts male labor, tax, and utility, and then discards the male spirit when it is no longer useful. When the state strips a father of his children through the gender-biased family courts, it is engaging in the systemic erasure of the male. We do not cite these stats to ask for handouts. We cite them to indict a system that views male life as expendable fuel for the feminist utopia. So what is the man to do in this exile? He must build an internal fortress using the trivium of the mind. Logic, grammar, and rhetoric are the only companions that will never betray you. Grammar allows you to define reality so the gaslighters cannot twist your words. Logic allows you to dismantle their arguments with the precision of a surgeon. Rhetoric gives you the voice to speak the truth to power. When you possess the trivium, you carry the legacy of Athens and Rome within you, a citadel of reason that no social shaming campaign can breach. The isolation they forced upon you becomes the library where you study the manuals of your own liberation. Ultimately, this solitude is not a permanent state of exile, but a testing ground for the new vanguard. We must turn the loneliness epidemic into the brotherhood of the red-pilled. Use your isolation to vet potential allies. When you meet a man in this wasteland, test his mettle with logic, probe him with uncomfortable truths about the nature of women and the state, and see if he crumbles or if he stands firm. We are not looking for drinking buddies. We are looking for philosophical compatriots. Slowly, quietly, we build the networks of the rational, the men who have seen the rot and refuse to eat it. We reband, not in weakness or neediness, but in overwhelming, undeniable strength. You now hold the sledgehammer of truth, and you can see the cracks in the false consciousness where the paint of Marxism is peeling off the rotting drywall of the superstructure. We have proven irrefutably that the economic base is a hallucination. The real base is evolutionary biology, blood and bone. While the cultural superstructure is nothing more than a fever dream designed to extract your labor and silence your reason. You understand that the vanguard party is not in a history book, but sitting in HR departments and family courts, a conspiratorial cabal of hysterics using critical theory as a blunt instrument to castrate your potential. You know that when she tells you that bad joke, that absurdity designed to test your compliance, your silence is not rudeness. It is the shield of the stoic and the roar of a man who refuses to participate in the delusion. Look at yourself in the mirror. Shoulders back, chin up. That posture is not just a physical act. It is a biological rebellion against the beta slump they have engineered for you. When you walk down the street with presence, occupying space without apology, you are physically repudiating the lie that your existence is a sin. You have learned that your isolation is not a bug in the system, but a feature they fear because they know that a man alone with his thoughts is a man who cannot be gaslit or shamed. The statistics of male suicide and the loneliness epidemic are not cries for help from weak men. They are the casualties of a war waged against the masculine spirit. And you are the survivor who has refused to become a statistic. By rejecting the fake laugh and the performative emasculation of the corporate diversity seminar, you have reclaimed your narrative and your dignity. Now, go forth into the Babylon of the woke and wield the trivium like a broadsword. Use grammar to define their terms before they redefine reality. Use logic to shatter their non sequiturs, and use rhetoric to mock their absurdities until the echoes of their lies fade into the dust. You are no longer a victim of the gynocentric conspiracy. You are a vanguard of truth in your own right. Take this knowledge and use it to save your brothers, to protect your sons, and to redeem the living spirit of Western civilization from the clutches of the mind virus. Do not hide this light, share it, debate it, and watch the spell of ignorance break around you. And now the sponsored book, Introduction, Feminist Revenge Fantasy, Hating Dads, Hurting Kids, Men Are Under Attack. If you're reading this, you already sense it, the quiet erosion of your dignity, the sneering dismissal of your struggles, the cultural gaslighting that paints you as the villain in a story where you're the casualty. I wrote this book because I've watched the men I love get devoured by a system that demands their sacrifice while spitting on their graves. My father worked 60-hour weeks to provide, only to lose half his pension in a divorce he didn't want. My brother spent 2 years fighting false abuse allegations to see his kids. My college roommate hanged himself after a Title IX tribunal branded him a rapist over a drunken hookup both parties regretted. These aren't isolated tragedies. They're symptoms of a war waged against masculinity itself. A war this book arms you to win. This isn't for the faint-hearted or the politically correct. If you still believe feminism empowers everyone or that equality hasn't morphed into female supremacy, put this down and go binge Netflix. But if you're ready to confront hard truths like how suffragettes bombed buildings while men died in trenches, why 73 million annual abortions fuel a eugenics industrial complex, or how courts legally steal your wealth if your wife decides she's bored, keep reading. We'll dissect the lies together. You'll learn why toxic masculinity is a feminist trap designed to pathologize male strength, how paternity fraud traps millions in fatherhood fraud, and why the trans movement's real victims are women and children. I've packed these pages with data feminists pray you'll never see. CDC stats proving men are 40% of domestic abuse victims, OSHA. Reports showing males comprise 93% of workplace deaths, and studies exposing how family courts prioritize maternal whims over children's needs. This book is your shield and sword. It's for fathers, sons, brothers, and any woman brave enough to question the cult that swapped liberation for man-hating lunacy. You'll walk away armed with irrefutable arguments, darkly comic takedowns of woke hypocrisy, and strategies to reclaim your life from gynocratic tyranny. The gender war ends here. Your move. Feminist Revenge Fantasy, Hating Dads, Hurting Kids, written by Sophie Marie Eve Riker. Buy now, links in description.